Hey everybody, welcome to another video. In this video I will be going over some aim training and some aiming tips for anybody trying to actually get some serious practice in, and anybody who's trying to basically better their aim in Valorant. This doesn't really just necessarily apply to Valorant, this basically applies to any first-person shooter, and I will try my best to provide an in-depth guide on how you could better your aim. So it doesn't matter who you pick. Right now I'm in the practice arena. So when you go right into your practice tool, there's a selection for shooting range. Click that and you'll enter a room that looks like this. So the first thing that you would want to do is first change your bot armor to on. It's just more realistic, and if it's more punishing when you don't land those headshots. The next thing I would do is go to speed and make sure it's on easy, which it should be already. And then just pick whatever gun you want to practice with. So you know, if you're bad with pistols, just go use pistols. If you're bad with like SMGs, use an SMG, or you know, etc., etc. So just come to this range, just practice your shots. You know, see here, it lasts 30 seconds. The best score that you can get is 30. So just sit here and practice a little bit and get used to kind of hitting the audio is really loud, I'm sorry. Get used to hitting those flicks. And that's one good way to warm up before a game. Just come in here. You can even change the speed a little bit. And that's definitely one good way to warm up. The other way that you could warm up in this is just go to eliminate 50 and strafe. And this basically just spawns 50 enemies over... It just spawns 50 enemies and they'll start strafing basically as soon as they spawn. I like to do this because strafing is definitely a little bit harder to predict. You can't just, like, you know, adjust your aim and look at their head. You have to count for them moving, which is more realistic to what's going to happen in a game. So a lot of the times, I spend most of my days warming up with that, and I would say my aim is pretty decent. I think if you do the 50 strafe, the average is probably going to be anywhere between 60 to 80 seconds. Actually, more than likely 70 to 80. It's probably going to be more average. And if you're getting like anything less than 70, you're doing a really, really good job. My best score, which doesn't really mean anything because it obviously depends on how they spawn, my best score is like 56 seconds. So I can definitely do a hand cam, or I guess an arm cam, if that's what you guys want. So I think the biggest thing with aiming is, if you can, obviously not everybody can, but if you can, I would try and reduce your sensitivity. I think that's the most important thing. When it comes to getting better aim. Obviously it's not absolutely necessary, but when your sensitivity is really quick, it's definitely a lot harder to land those more precision flicks. The higher sensitivity, you know, the more distance and mistake, the less basically you got to move your mouse for like a certain distance, and the more error that you can have. So I'm playing currently at 35 in-game sensitivity at 800 DPI. And this aim training tool is really cool because you can dynamically increase and decrease your aiming sensitivity within, without having to go into the menu. These small boxes represent 0.01 and these bigger boxes represent 0.1. For some reason it's not changing. It's supposed to. Oh, there we go. It's just really weird. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, if I increase my sensitivity to 1, I mean, like it's a lot harder to flick when you're this high sense. So let's increase it all the way back down. So the other thing that's generally important, and this one's less important than the sensitivity thing in my opinion, is learning to use your arm when you're trying to turn. So I don't mean necessarily aiming with your arm, but just being able to turn with your arm. And So if you're making like slow movements, you're turning a corner around say you're like flashing as Phoenix and you want to turn the corner, get used to using your arm to do that, only because when you're playing at lower sense and you try and peek an angle, right? Like if you're coming out swinging 90 degrees into somebody's over here, it's a lot harder to just kind of flick over there. Like I can't just see somebody then flick. It's definitely really weird. My wrist doesn't go to the right. It doesn't rotate clockwise that much. So if I'm gonna come out and peek like this swing, it's a lot easier for me to, this is only like maybe like 10 degrees. So if I'm coming out and I'm swinging into a 90-degree angle and I see somebody right there, it's a lot easier for me to flick. I know it's kind of complicated, and so what I'm trying to get to is that it's like compound. So you're basically using your arm and wrist in order to land shots and reactively like that. So learning how to move with your arm makes it easier when you need to land a really far flick. So for example, it's really hard to explain here, but if I'm pushing out and I need to flick at that guy, right? I'm gonna use my arm and then my wrist to flick. So I pretty much use my arm here and then flick with my wrist. It's like an arm wrist movement, and you can kind of notice it because I'm not gonna flick my arm that hard. So the wrist flicks are definitely more precise movements, and so this range definitely helps you learn how to get more precise flicks. So this one stuff you will spawn within the 60 degrees right here, 30 each way. And this just helps you flick within this range. So for me, from my sense personally, and in most first-person shooters I do, I like to have a this is also kind of a weird explanation. So I might actually release a hand cam after the fact. But my general preference is when I swipe across my entire mouse pad, or my entire room that I dedicate to my mouse, I like it to be about 180 degrees. So as you can see, I can't move any more or less than about 180 degrees. And basically this feels more natural to me when I'm turning, first of all. But this also allows me to have more flicks that are like reasonably within my range of precision, I guess. So yeah, I think the two things that I would focus on if I was trying to get better aim is to learn how to turn with your arm. Obviously, it's not absolutely necessary. You could still play with your wrist, but you have to realize you can only do so much with your wrist. It has limited motion. You only have like about a 60-degree motion with your wrist, 30 degrees clockwise and counterclockwise, counterclockwise. So just keep in mind that playing with your wrist definitely, in a first-person shooter, definitely puts you at a disadvantage. So if you could and you have the ability to, I would recommend using your arm and practicing some compound motion. But otherwise, I mean, it's just all grinding and practice. Just come into this range. You could play real games if you wanted to. That's fine. Go into a real game, practice your aim on real people and real movements. But I mean, this is definitely a solid way. Valorant definitely offers a solid way for you to practice your aim in-game. And you can sit here. Sometimes I like to watch TV. I'll warm up. I'll talk to some friends. Whatever. It's not a big deal. Try and hit these in one shot. As you see, I'm missing a lot, so my flicks are definitely like off today. And see how much you can get hit in your score of 13. So that's just basic flick aiming. I guess I'll go over briefly spray control. So spray control, I guess more importantly, will probably be on your Phantom and Vandal. The basic way that you should probably pull down is going to be an upside down 7 like that, and you basically want to pull down like this. So as you can see, that was a horrible spray. Oh my god. I'm not too great with the Vandal spray personally, especially since I've just been trying to learn how to tap with it. But if you watch it go up, it goes basically like the number 7. It goes a little curvy at the end, so it's more like this, or it's more like this. So you'll want to inverse that. You want to pull down and then do the little loop and then come up. or go to the right, like that. And you get a pretty good spray pattern. Really, you don't need to land that many bullets. You just go 1, 2, 3, and they're more than dead at that point. So as long as you, and this is why I emphasize flicking, as long as you can get the first couple shots, they're gonna be pretty much dead. So that entire spray pattern is almost irrelevant, unless you're trying to go for spray transfer. The other thing that I would say that you want to keep is your head. You want to keep your crosshair at pretty much head level for the enemies. I think that's probably the second most important thing outside of learning your flicks, because you know, if you're peeking a corner and you're looking at the ground, you're not ever gonna land that headshot, right? Because you got to flick up. The more work you got to do, the more error you're gonna basically invoke into your aiming. So if you know approximately where their heads are gonna be on that elevation, see, like I already pretty much expect his head to be here when I peek, and it's pretty much there. So when I peek, I can just shoot him, and you know, if you peek correctly, you'll just one tap him. And so that's honestly probably the second most important thing. I don't want to draw out this video for too long. If you guys want a more serious, like, in-depth guide on aiming, I can release another video. It's that part 2, I guess. But just to recap, the 2 most important things I would say, and then a little bit of an extra tip is 1, get your flicks down. Make sure your flicks are as precise as they can be. Precise meaning they hit the same spot every single time. Mine aren't perfect, as you can see, but you pretty much want to be like that. Go slow at first if you need to, and then speed up. That's definitely really important, because if you see somebody, you want to be able to flick to their head before they can shoot you. And the other thing is, make sure your crosshair is always going to be at head level, depending on where you're peeking. That one's going to take a little bit of practice, but if you're walking down a step and this is pretty much head level, right? This is like kind of towards the middle of your screen almost. Probably a little bit lower. You want to aim a little bit lower, because you're going to be coming down a little bit. Well, you're going to be aiming at them down before you go down the stairs, so you want to, you know, adjust accordingly. Same with this guy, right? Like if I'm aiming straight, I'm not gonna be able to shoot. I'm gonna be above his head. So you want to aim a little bit lower, and then when you come down the stairs, you want to go up. It's kind of hard. Aiming's one of those things that you kind of just have to come in and grind and practice. But the 2 things, like I said, that you can definitely control are your crosshair level and your flicks. So come into the training ground sometimes and just practice your aim. That's all I can say. Anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below in the comments section whether you think I could go over more in depth on the video guide. If you want a video cam or a cam of my arm explaining the more intricate movements, I can definitely do that. Just gonna take me a little bit of time to actually set that up. And give me some feedback. I know this is probably the first couple videos I'll be doing for Valorant, and hopefully over time I plan on improving the quality. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your weekend.